Everyone, good morning and a warm welcome to everyone and thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join us for this third Simune webinar series on cybersecurity. Simune is Locuz's venture into cybersecurity. At Simune, we bridge the visible and the invisible cybersecurity gaps for the businesses that aspire to be digital with uncompromising approach to innovation. We focus on key technologies like MDR, Zero Trust, Security Operations or SecOps, IDAM, Database and Application Security, Cloud Security, and more. Today, for this webinar, we are focusing on achieving principles of Zero Trust using PAM. We'll spend about 25 to 30 minutes where we will be talking about achieving principles of Zero Trust using PAM, and we will spare last 10 minutes of the webinar towards question and answers. I hope everyone is keeping safe and positive during these challenging times. Without much ado, let me just go over some of the webinar hygiene protocols that we would like all of us to follow. Let's keep ourselves on mute at all times for better audio clarity. You may please ping any questions or thoughts or ideas that you have on the chat box and we'll surely take them up. To avoid the flow of the presenter, we will stick to taking all of the questions at the end of the presentation during our Q&A. And with that, let me introduce Mr. Manoj Tiwari, our speaker for today. Manoj is the principal security consultant with over 2 decades and more of industry experience, delivering various PAM and IDAM projects. He is a cybersecurity enthusiast who believes in constant learning. With that, over to you, Manoj.
Okay, thanks, Runa. Thanks for introducing me. Hello, everyone. This is Manoj. Today, I'm going to talk about how, if we deploy a privileged access management solution, how we can achieve a few principles of zero trust. So today, the topics what I would like to cover is, first we'll talk about what's the common thread, right? In all the cyber attacks, let us see what is the common thread in all the attacks what we see. And then I'm going to cover, basically we'll try to understand who are basically these privileged users and the risk associated with these privileged users and how typically a business can identify privileged accounts, whether they are at risk or not. So in a way that will help them to decide whether they want PAM to be deployed in their environment. And then we'll see how we address the threat, and also we'll see how PAM can help achieve the principles of zero trust. And in the end, I'll cover one case study also so that you get an idea of what we have done in other customer places. So to start with, we are seeing a big shift towards technology adoption and digitalization, which is driving the world today. More and more companies and individuals are embracing these technologies. And while this technology adoption is on rise, so is the cybercrimes, right? So these stats, what I'm showing you is very alarming. You see the number of attacks and how the industry is prepared, whether they are really prepared to secure or to protect their data against these threats, right? The cyber attacks are directed towards both the organizations and individuals as well. And today's enterprise can no longer feel secure, and the fear of the cyber attack keeps on lingering. And the United States is the number one, and India is not far, right? It falls in number 2 in the number of target attacks in the world. And you'll be surprised why China is not there in the screen, because China is basically where all the cyber attack starts, right? So around 21% of the cyber attacks in the world, it originates from China. So you'll not find China in this diagram here. So this is all about the cyber threats, right? The industry, how they are prepared and whether they are prepared or not. Usually the time taken to really identify whether their data breaches happened or not, that time is also very long. And the average cost of data breach is huge. So what basically is the threat, right? So what is the common threat in all these attacks? So according to Forrester research, they estimate that 80% of the security breaches involve threat of privileged credentials. So your privileged credentials is the common threat among all the attacks, you can say. So really we have to understand who are these privileged users and how do we secure them and how do we monitor these privileged credentials, right? Because this is the most common threat in all the attacks. So first we'll try to understand who are these privileged users. You know that the administrators, right, who manage the entire IT show in any business, be it the database admin, the sysadmin, or the application administrators or the network administrators. So these are basically the privileged accounts or the privileged users, right? And in the olden days, you had these people sitting on premise, well protected within their network. But over the years, we have seen the growth of cloud, right, mobile apps. So these has made the privileged users access their data from even outside, right, from internet. You could be accessing your Amazon Web Service or your Oracle Cloud or your Azure. And you also have these administrators accessing from outside. And in today's time of pandemic, what we are going through, the number of users accessing from outside or from internet, right? This is huge. This is going in the world. And then, so it exposes our data or our network outside. And then the threat also goes up. And also you have your own partners, vendors, right? They also access your data and you also give them certain admin privileges so that they can perform certain activities on the servers or on the applications. You may have some developer from your partner channel where you would require access to certain servers or database, right? And then you don't have the visibility and control what that particular admin does. So for internal IT people or the internal IT administrators, there could be a threat of insider threat, right? There could be a malicious intent of any administrator who wants to really do some damage. So that is called an insider threat. And you may also have some unauthorized user accessing your data from outside because you have given so many access privileges from outside the world that they can access your data. And these external threat can also, right, they can damage or they can create problem in your system. So these are basically the previous users what we talk about. So there could be some internal users with some malicious intent trying to do something, and there could be some external user who might log in or who might steal the credential, and then once they come into your network, they can really create some havoc, right? So going forward, we'll see how these privileged users, so why these privileged users are risk we have to talk about, right? So let's start with understanding these privileged users, why we have a challenge on these privileged users. So these privileged users or the privileged accounts are very powerful. Very powerful in the sense, since they have very high level of privileges, so they can do anything in the system. They can reboot a system, they can shut down a system, or they can install some malicious software or malware. So they have all the privileges. They can delete the data, they can steal data. So these accounts are very powerful. And second, these accounts are everywhere. You can find them in every device, be it your network device, your database, your application. Across your IT landscape, you'll find these privileged accounts. And most time, these accounts are anonymous also. Anonymous in the sense they don't have any owner, right? They are very generic. These accounts are named like root, administrator, admin 1, admin 2, and you don't have any owner. So these are anonymous, so you don't get the accountability of these anonymous accounts. And because these are anonymous, you often find that these accounts are shared among so many administrators. There could be more than one administrator using the same a generic account to log into your devices. And then hence you get the accountability issue. You never know which user is using which account at what time he has accessed the servers and what activities he has performed on the servers. Right? So these are the challenges you face with these high privileged accounts. And so hence you get also the risks. The risk could be if any user with malicious intent or if any user steals the credentials of these privileged accounts, so they can really damage your company's reputation. There could be some financial loss. There could be some trust loss between your business and the clients. There could also be some possible lawsuits and fines which could be imposed on you. And your business can also get disrupted, right? So you may not be able to perform as you were doing earlier if there is any data breach. And you might find that some of the small companies may not be able to take this data breach or attacks, and some of them have to even shut down their business. So these are the risks associated with these accounts. So we have to really take care of these accounts. So, but how will business identify whether their privileged account are at risk, right? So this is the question where they have to decide whether they really want to go for a privileged access management solution. So to have them assess internally whether their privileged accounts are at risk or not. So these are the few steps we can follow. First thing is we can check whether the privileged access, you have the visibility in your privileged access or not. So whether you have to find if you have the complete knowledge of privileged credentials that exist in there in your IT environment. Sometimes you find that you may not have the visibility and you only come to know when there's any audit performed. And these unknown privileged accounts can create havoc, right? Because you don't have the visibility, you never know what these privileged accounts can do. And the breach can go undetected because organizations, they don't have the visibility. Often we have seen these privileged accounts, they are managed manually and you don't have an automated process of managing these accounts. And sometimes we have seen the administrators because he has to manage and so many privileged accounts across the network. Very often they note down some passwords in some spreadsheets or somewhere, right? So that is again a threat. So visibility is a major issue. You have to check whether you have the visibility of privileged access or not. And then you have to see how secure is your privileged accounts. So whether your privileged accounts are static or whether it is rotated very often or periodically or not. So these are some of the questions we have to ask. And also you have to check whether you have a multi-factor authentication against all these privileged accounts, right? So very often we have seen these privileged accounts are shared, right? Then you don't get the accountability and you don't have multi-factor authentication for each account on each device. And sometimes you might find that the passwords of these accounts are not rotated according to the company's policy. You may have a 30 days or 45 days of rotating the password policy. And the next big question is whether you have a least privileged policy in your organization or not. Least privileged means providing bare minimum permissions to your admins required for carrying out tasks. And most of the time, admins use super accounts like root to perform activities. So instead of creating sub accounts and with minimum permissions, what some companies do, they directly give access to the super account like root or administrators to their admins so that they can do their activities. So this is again a challenge because mostly what you have to do is you have to create some accounts with different permissions and then you have to share it with your administrators. And organizations not having these least privileged policy would put their privileged accounts at risks. These are the challenges or these are the loopholes you have to find within your system to check whether your privileged account is secured or not. And the third, What about the accountability of your privileged access? You have to verify whether you have generic accounts in your system and whether these generic accounts are shared or not, right? Some organizations, like I said, they share some generic accounts across the administrators, and then you lose the idea of those accounts. And I've also seen to some organizations what they do just to get the accountability of these accounts, they create some named accounts in the systems. So they create the accounts with the name of the person, right? That is one way of achieving accountability, but the challenges you'll face is, so how do you manage the life cycle of these accounts, right? So you never know when the person leaves the organization and whether his accounts is disabled or deleted in the system or not. And how many such accounts you'll create, because there will be people keep on joining in your system as administrator, people keep on leaving, right? And their role getting changed within your system. So managing the life cycle of these named accounts will be a challenge. And next thing, what you have to say is ability, whether you have the ability to detect misuse of privileged accounts, right? Do you have any monitoring capabilities to check whether your privileged accounts are used in a proper way or not? Do you have? I think someone is not muted. Thank you. And how do you detect a unusual behavior of a user? Right, that's a big question. Whether you know my user is behaving in a proper way or not. Do you run any kind of analytics in your system to check the user behavior? Because that is very important. Today you might trust one administrator, right? But what happens after a couple of months? Do you still trust that user, or he might get something which is bothering him, right, against the organization, and he may do something else, right? So how do you manage the behavior? Do you have any behavior analysis in your system? So this is how you have to check whether you can detect any misuse of the privileged accounts. And next you have to see, how do you act in case of you have a suspicious activity going on in the system? Whether you have a incident response plan or a policy where once you know and you can really stop that activity, right? And most of the time we find that this response plan is not automated, right? It takes time to first detect what happened in my system, and then how do I really act? And the also big question is the time to respond. Most of the time we see that the time to response is not fast, right? It takes time to really identify and block some system, right? This is the area you have to really check in whether you have a response plan and automate it, right? And next, what happens if your data gets compromised, right? Do you have any recovery plan in place? Or do you have a mechanism to restore back the data in case the data has been compromised or stolen? And if attacker manages to change the privileged account password, the admins can be logged out of their system, right? You no longer have the control of your system. And in such scenarios, how do you get back the control of your systems? And how do you recover the data, right? So these are some of the assessment questions which you can check within your system, and then you can really identify whether your privileged accounts are at risk. And now let us see, once we identify that my privileged accounts are at risk, right? So what do I do to address the threat? So in short, you have to protect your privileged accounts. You have to have control on your privileged accounts. You should have some kind of monitoring the activities what these privileged users are performing. And for that, you have to implement some principles of zero trust around these privileged access. The first pillar of zero trust or securing your data could be secure your privileged credentials. So your privileged credentials should not be known by many people, right? So if it can be vaulted in a system, so in a way you're protecting the passwords. In a way you're not showing the passwords to administrators. So this is one way of protecting your passwords, you can vault your passwords, and you can also rotate the passwords very often. So, and you can stop showing the passwords in plain text to the users, and you can give him some kind of single sign-on or transparent login so that the administrators, they just click something and they just access the system without really seeing the password. And next thing is how you prevent unauthorized access. So once you have the login in place, the password vault in place, so it's better to protect that with the multi-factor authentication, right? So this is very important in avoiding any breach. So once you have two-factor authentication, kind of prevent your unauthorized access. And above this, you should also have some fine-grained authorization policy saying that only according to the role of the administrators, I'll be allowing him access to certain devices. I will not allow everyone access to every device. So this is how you have to prevent the access. And next, you should also follow the policy of limiting the privileged escalation, right? So, like I said, you should create some certain accounts with different permissions, and only these accounts with minimum permissions has to be given to your administrators to perform their activities. And in any case, if the administrators want access to the super user, the highest privileged account, then you should have some kind of approval system, right? So that when he tries to access, then he has to go for a approval, and it also has to be some time bound access, right? He can't just have access once it is approved for 24 hours. You can restrict some time saying that only for this time I will give access to my super account to this user. And also you can have some policies where you can define that once I give access, I should also monitor his activities, right? I should not allow him to run certain commands or any Linux-based system, maybe intentionally or unintentionally if he types any critical commands. So how do I stop him or how do I warn him? You can also have some leap for prevention, like you can restrict the administrators from jumping from that particular one server to the other server. So this is how you can limit his privilege escalation. And in the end, if you have above and all of this, you can have some kind of monitoring and reporting or the audit. So you will also have the audits where you can have the accountability linked for any privileged generic user to a particular administrator, right? You will come to know that which was the administrator used which account of my device, at what point of time he accessed this system, and once he accesses the system, what are the activities he performed, that also you can be audited. The basic principles of your zero trust which you can achieve using the privilege access. So now let us see how in action in PAM, if you deploy in your environment, so how does it look like? So how it will protection in every step, right? So let's assume here is my administrator who is trying to access the servers, right, which is in your either in your data center or your public or private cloud. And then when he's trying to access, so what are we going to do? So we will see, or we will try to apply control, right? And we'll try to detect at every step whether any of his activities is malicious or not. So the first thing what we have to do is all the privileged accounts in your devices or your endpoints. First thing you have to do is you have to vault the passwords. You should have a vaulting facility where all the root account, the administrators, and all the privileged accounts has to be vaulted. So this way, you will be securing your accounts in a way that these administrators, they can no longer access directly your endpoints. They will be forced to access PAM first, and from PAM only they will be allowed to access this. So this is what PAM brings in. So PAM will act as a gateway for all the administrators, and all the passwords will be vaulted in this. And the administrators, because at any point of time they will not know the passwords of the accounts, they will be forced to log into PAM first. So this is the first layer of security what we are achieving. And then once we have these passwords vaulted, then I'll see that I'm going to restrict the login of these administrators. I will not allow everyone to log into PAM, right? I will only allow the administrators who have access to PAM. And also, once he's trying to access to PAM, I will implement a strong authentication. So I'll be securing the login also. So I can implement any 2FA solution with my PAM, and then he has to log into PAM and he has to verify, he has to say that this is who I am logging. So this is the second layer of security what we, once he successfully logged in, so we are again checking his authorization. So whether he's authorized to access database or is authorized to access application or some network device, right? So this is where I will define the authorization for every user. I'll define within PAM that this set of users are supposed to access only this setup. So this is where after login, I'm able to apply one more layer of security of authorization. And once I do this, the administrators will see only those devices, right, which is supposed to access based on authorization. And for any minimum privileged accounts, I can have an option of allowing him the access to this device if he's using a low privileged account, right, with minimum permissions. But to access the device using a super account like root or administrator, so time restriction, right? Enforce some workflow where he has to request the access, he has to specify the date and time, and he should also specify the reasons why he wants access to the device using the. So in a way, I'm making secure that I'm not giving access directly to this particular account or to these critical systems 24/7, right? It has to be some time bound. So this is where I will apply the least privilege policy. And after that, once he is able to access any device, I will not show him the password of that device, right? Of that. So I can also have a single sign-on going where once I have authorized him, and once he's authorized and when he has taken the approval of accessing the system, I will just allow him direct access without showing him the password. So here also I am securing the passwords without showing him the password. And once he successfully logged in the device, right, clearing all these steps, I will also now monitor what he is trying to do in the system. So if it is a Unix-based, Linux-based system, a CLI-based end device, I can also monitor some of his commands. So I can blacklist certain commands where I will not allow him to intentionally or unintentionally running commands, which can break my system or it can create problem in my system. And I can also warn him if he's trying to do or run some commands. I can just give him certain warning saying that you're not supposed to do this and your session will be terminated, something like that. So this is where I'll be enforcing some policies and doing monitoring. And above this, I will also have some auditing going. I will also have some video recording for some critical servers so that whatever activities is done, there's a video recording and that will help me in my forensic studies, or if I want to do any analysis in future, right? I can just go and play back the video and I can check what he has done on the system. And in the end, I will also have the password rotation. So either I can have a password rotation like for 30 days or 45 days, or I can also do a password rotation for every access. That can also be done using the PAM. So whenever he has performed his activity and he has logged out of the system, I will immediately rotate the password. Even though I'm not showing the password to the user, I will still rotate the password. So that can also be done using PAM. So in a way, we are ensuring the password is not same across, right? Keeps on rotating. And in the end, I will also have some kind of governance also going through this, because very often we see that over a period of time, some of the administrators, they kind of elevate their privileged access. They start with some L1 account, and then for a period of time, right, they also get access to the L2 account. So I can run kind of periodic access certification, maybe half yearly or quarterly, just to ensure that right people have the right access, right? So this access certification will be done by manager or compliance or a security of. He will just go and check whether the people are having right access in the PAM or not. So this is how I apply control and detection into every step. And if you combine this with the threat analytics, you get more proactive monitoring of the user behavior. Right? On the user behavior principles, it continuously monitors the user behavior based on various contexts, like from where he's accessing, from which device he's accessing, or from which location he's accessing, at what time he's accessing, how was his behavior a couple of days back, and how his behavior is today, right? So this analytics keep on monitoring the user behavior, and also it will detect if any malicious activity is done by any administrator, right? And not only it will detect, it will automatically take some mitigation action also. The mitigation action could be either it can disable his account, or it can disable his session, whatever activities is doing on it, it will be terminated immediately. Or it can also trigger a session recording if for some particular server you have not configured a session recording earlier, but based on the user behavior, the threat analytics can immediately trigger a session recording. Or it can also alert some compliance officer saying that there was some unusual behavior uh, by a particular administrator, right? So these are the mitigation activities and mitigation plan you can configure in threat analytics. So threat analytics kind of bring in more proactive approach to the privilege access. Threat analytics, you prevent the breach, and you also have some operations insight. So you always can go and see the dashboards where you know how the user behavior was from which location or which device he accesses your endpoints, right? And this will also improve your compliance. So you can achieve some principles of zero trust using your PAM. I'll just talk about one case study where what the customer gained, right? When we implemented PAM. So when we started when we're doing some assessment in this customer place, we found that the Linux servers, which were around 600 odd, in most of the Linux servers, this customer was having named accounts, right? Just to get some accountability, right? He was not using the generic account, but he was using named accounts. But what we found when we run a discovery using PAM in their system across all the 600 servers, we found that on each server there were in around 30 to 40 named accounts. You can imagine how many accounts you would have created in 600 odd servers. And also we found that most of these accounts were orphan in the sense, I mean, these people were not in the system. They already left the organization, but their accounts were still in the system, and it was not in a disabled state. And also they didn't have the proper automation mechanism where they can rotate the root passwords or the administrator passwords. So it was a manual task, so they had to always perform this password rotation periodically, and they were not able to run the audits on these root accounts. And if some users they wanted the root account access, so the accountability was an issue. And so these were some of the challenges those customers having. And after we implemented PAM, so these are the things which he gained, right? So what we did, we abolished the practice of the named accounts, because named accounts is not the real answer for having accountability. Right? So what we did, we advised him to remove all the named accounts, create certain accounts, maybe 3 or 4, based on different permissions, depending on your organization requirement. Let's say you have 3 level of administrators in your organization, like you define as L1, L2, and L3. Why don't you have 3 generic accounts in your devices? It could be named as L1 admin, L2 admin, and L3 admin. And based on the policies and the authorization and the rules within the PAM, we will decide which administrator can access L1 account or he can access L3, right? So these are the things we suggested them and they implemented. And also they integrated their PAM solution with their FA solution. So they had a RSA in their organization, they integrated with the RSA. And if any user who was in a L1 or L2 category, and when he used to log into PAM, we didn't configure any approval because this guy had least privileges. So he can't do much activities or he can't do much malicious activity on these servers. So these guys, they were able to auto log into the system using the least privileged account. But whenever any administrators, if he wanted to have access of root account for any particular server, then we configured a workflow where he will log into the PAM and then he will request a form. He will fill in the date and time, and also he will mention why he wants the access of this root account. And he can do this request well in advance, right? So suppose there is activity which he wants to perform on weekend, so he can raise a request on Monday, Tuesday itself. And once his manager or any security officer he approves, so this particular administrator will get access of the root account on that particular day and time. And it will be a time-bound access, right? So you can just keep on using this account for the whole day. Right? We can restrict that. And the root account password was not rotated. It was the transparent login of a single sign-on. And we also set a policy where the passwords of all these accounts, right, what we created, what we onboarded in PAN, those was rotated periodically. And we also implemented certain blacklist commands where he can't run any commands like your remove command or reboot command. And all these activities was logged in the PAM logs. And also for some critical servers, we suggested them to have session recording. So there was also session recording which is going on for some critical activities. So these are the things what the customer gained when he implemented PAM. So I think in today's session, I've made it clear, right, why you need PAM and how do you assess whether you require PAM or not, and what you gain when you implement PAM. So in summary, can only say that it's time to make PAM a priority, because this will really give you a control, also have a detection and a prevention mechanism right around your user accounts. This will be the right step towards your cybersecurity goals, and it will also align with your identity and access management process in your system. So I can only say yes, PAM is a must solution in case you really feel that those accounts are not really secure. So that's it for today's session. If there's any queries, I think you can post in the chat box and I'll answer a few of them. And most of the questions, if I'm not able to answer, I'll really get back.
Thank you, Manoj, for this engaging session. I hope it was insightful and helpful for all of our attendees. We just had a few questions on the chat window. Manoj, would you like to take them up? There was one from Mr. Satvin.
Yeah, I'm just going through the chat. Just give me some time. Can we control screen capture is one question, right, from Satvein. Uh, the screen capture is optional. Like I said, you need not have the screen capture or the session recording, what we call in PAM, for every device or for every account, right? You can identify which are my critical servers or the critical accounts. And for those, only you can have your screen capturing. So it's an optional configuration. It's not mandatory.
There's one from Mr. Rajesh Mahajan.
Yeah, just give me. I'm just scrolling down the question. Oh yeah, who should manage the PAM in an organization, right? So once you implement PAM or once you deploy PAM in your organization, uh, the management of PAM, you can automate the management of PAM, right? Only you can have the administrators of PAM only to see the availability and performance of PAM. Otherwise, everything you can just automate it, right? You can integrate your PAM with your Active Directory so that you can onboard your administrators, any new administrators joining in organization. You can just onboard from your AD itself. You can create certain groups in AD for your administrators, for your Linux administrators, or for your database, right? You can create certain different security groups in AD. And whenever you make any user in AD a member of these particular groups, you will be able to log into PAM. And in PAM, because these groups will already be imported in PAM and certain policies is already assigned within PAM. Once this user gets onboarded automatically from AD to PAM and he logs into PAM, you'll be able to see only those devices, right? Which is already defined within the policy. So as such, I would say there is not much to do in PAM once it is implemented. There could be certain aspects uh, that is very rare where some new policies have to be created in PAM for new set of devices or new set of users. Otherwise, the PAM can be automatically managed. There are certain administrators who need super administrators to manage the same. Yes, like I said, your super accounts can be created in your PAM, and these super accounts you can have a restriction or a time bound access to these super accounts, right? Because you don't want these super accounts to be given to all the administrators at all time. So why not I have a workflow where let him request for the super account and let him mention the date and time and then only I'll approve it. So that is possible in PAM. Are there any standard PAM solutions that are customized? Yes, almost all the PAM solutions available in the market are customizable. So whatever your policies is there in your organization, so all those policies can be implemented. Am I missing any questions, right? I think whatever is there in the chat box, yeah.
Yeah, Manoj, there was this question about license model from Mr. Sharad. What is the license model for?
Acha. Yeah, so licenses for most, if not all, the PAM solutions in the market are based on the active administrator count. If you have 50 administrators in your organization, so the license would be based on this 50 count. And there are two types of licenses. One is perpetual and one is subscription based. So this is quite simple licensing model. But some PAM solutions, they also license based on the session recordings also, right? So some they have license for PAM and separate license for session recording. But the other vendors, they combine this, so they have only one license model. So it depends on the vendor what you choose in PAM.
We have one from Mr. Shalin. How can one prevent external attacks with PAM?
Yeah. So the external attacks, right? I was talking about in today's days, right? The Corona, what we are having now, we are seeing that most of the people are accessing from home. They might be using some VPN client to get into the network, right? For normal users, you don't have challenge because work from home. If you give for the normal users, they once log in the network, they can access only the applications. But what about the IT administrators, right? The IT administrators or the IT people from your vendors or partners, right? So what they do. So once you have VPN in place, they log into the VPN into the network. Once they come in the network, because you have this PAM gateway in between, you will not be allowing him any direct access to any direct servers, right? Any servers or database, right, or your network devices. You can just restrict the access. You can block the port from his endpoint to the servers because now you have a PAM gateway solution. All the communication, network communication will happen only from this PAM gateway to the end devices, to the servers and the database. Right? So even though this user is IT administrator accessing from outside, right, from your internet, once he comes within your network, he can only access your PAM. So that's it. So in your network policy, you can allow him access only to the PAM client, the PAM server, right? So this is how you prevent. Otherwise, if you don't have PAM gateway in your organization, what you do is you allowing access to multiple servers. So there is the threat there. So if any unauthorized person logs in, then he can access multiple servers, right? So this is how you can prevent unauthorized or the outside people coming into your network.
Uh, we also have one more from Mr. Santosh
Is there
about
any recommendation?
any mail alerts that we get to respective managers for these threats.
Yes. We can do that. So you can have at many places the alert mechanism. Like I said, if he's running any unwanted commands, right? So you can alert the manager or any person you identify. And also in your threat analytics, right? In threat analytics also based on the user behavior, if the analytics solution find out that there is a risk, this particular user is performing, right? So you can also alert your manager saying that this user is behavior is changed today, right? This is what he was not doing earlier in last couple of weeks or months. So yes, there is a alert mechanism both from PAM and threat analytics.
I think Shaili had a follow-up question to her earlier question. Would you want to take that?
So I see that if there is a breakdown scenario in that case, so we can still run the production, right? Yeah, see,
Yes.
first of all, you can have a high availability of PAM, right, to avoid this breakdown. So, yeah.
But yeah, one my question is, hello?
Yeah, I think someone is speaking. Yeah, okay. So, like I said, to avoid to avoid any one point failure of PAM, it's always recommended that you have a high availability of PAM. You can configure few instances of your PAM in your production. You can also deploy one or two instances in your DR, right? So in a way, you ensure that at no point of time you have a single point of failure in PAM. That is one way of doing it. Yeah, external threats alerts informed through mails. Yes, the alert is through mails, correct.
There was a gentleman who wanted to talk. If you just ping us who you are, I can just unmute you if you would like to rather ask your question. Yeah. So in trying to keep the time, we have the last 5 minutes. If there are any more lingering thoughts or questions that you may want Manoj to address. Please feel free to use this time. Yeah, Mr. Rajesh Mahajan has a follow-up question, Manoj.
Yeah, is there any open source spam solution, right? Which we can try? Unfortunately, I didn't find any open source spam solution. Right? Even I was googling around from long time, and I didn't find any solution in open source for PAM. Yeah, but for other IDM solutions, yes, there are open source, but not for PAM. So it's all commercial.
I guess thanks, Mr. Rajesh. If there are no follow-up questions or if there are no thoughts to share, we would like to close the webinar here. Thank you, Manoj, for such an engaging,
And one last thing, Runa. I think if they have any questions, they can also mail me anytime if they feel they have any questions.
Yeah, we have Manoj Tiwari's email address mentioned right in the slide that we have. So I request you all to take a note in case you have any questions that you want to ask him later. Thank you, Manoj, and thank you to the participants for being such an engaging audience that we had. We would love to host you in future as well. As I said at the beginning of this webinar, this is the third in the series of cybersecurity webinars that we are doing. Will be coming up shortly. If you have any recommendations on the topic that you would like us to cover, please feel free to email us or Manojji at his email address. And we will also be sharing the presentation as well as the recording for this webinar all over email. Thank you and have a very, very good day.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Runa. Thank you.